Okay, then so do you see my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. So I just want to start a little bit with presentation of DoubleClick. Let's see if I'm just gonna open up my tab here. So, welcome. It's the first thing I want to say. My name is Lisa. I work for DoubleClick, and I just want to say a little bit about DoubleClick here. It's a company that was founded in 1989 and has since then been a reseller of technical software. We are located in Sweden, Gothenburg or Göteborg, which is on the west coast. And we have been working with OriginLab since the 1990s, the middle of the 1990s, basically. And we put in a picture here on the slide of how it looked back in the days at OriginLab. So you can see it's been around a while. And I put my email here in a slide just so you all have it. I think you do, but I just want to say that if you have any licensing questions or need any help, I'm available. So if you need any help, just email me. Mostly licensing and like purchasing, but if you have any technical issues, I'm here as well. I will help you as the best as I can. Yeah, that was kind of what I have. I'm gonna welcome Sergey, who will do this training session. Maybe Sergey, you want to say a bit about yourself instead of me?
Well, yeah. Well, to start with, I'm a human being. Well, yeah. Well, I'm right now the research professor at OBA Academy in Finland. I was educated in St. Petersburg State University a long time ago in the last century. And my background is polymer physics. And since the graduation, after getting my PhD degree, I was traveling quite a lot. So I was working for 13 years at Institute of Macromolecular Chemistry in Prague. I was a Fulbright professor and I spent something like a year at Harvard. I was a Leverhulme professor and my second long-term stay was related to University of Reading. I published more than 100 publications and I gave a lot of invited lectures. But I think the most important, and it's related to today's training session, that I have something like 20 years of experience with Origin. And I started using Origin when I was a PhD student. That was actually my last year of PhD study when I discovered Origin for myself. And since that time, I use Origin quite a lot. So in collaboration with the DoubleClick, we are trying to proliferate the knowledge about Origin and convince some users that Origin is very cool and handy software. Well, this is basically it.
Yeah, then maybe we should switch to your screen.
Yep.
Or yeah.
Yep.
I will stop sharing here. How do I do that? No. Here.
Yeah, cool. And I will start sharing my presentation. Just let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yeah,
yes.
Nice.
Okay, cool. So now I'm switching to laser pointer. Welcome everyone for today's training session. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Sergey Filippov, and I very welcome any questions from the audience. You can ask your question about Origin after the training session, or you can send it to Lisa. I think she actually shared a few slides ago the email contacts. And in the beginning, I would like to give you one very strong disclaimer. By no means it's a full course, because the Origin now is very broad. There are many features in Origin that you can do now, and you can do some graphing, fitting, statistics, you can build your own video, you can do programming, and well, because of this amount of features that developers they built in the Origin, I don't know Origin on 100%, and I evaluate my knowledge of Origin in 60-70%, and regrettably this number is decreasing every year, because developers they are again adding more handy features to this software. The motivation for today's seminar will be to give a very quick introduction to Origin for those who never worked with this software. For example, for those who are working primarily with Excel. And my main task is to convince you guys that Origin could be. And as a scientist, I would like to share with you some useful tricks that somebody can use in your common work with the Origin. And the last issue that will be addressed, not today, but tomorrow, I will overview some new features that appeared in Origin a couple of last years. So let's move on. And my first part of the presentation will be for those who are actually newbies, for those who are working with Excel, for example. And I think, and this is the main message for these people, that Origin is very cool. And the power of Origin, to my point of view, is laying on four main pillars. The first pillar that is very important to those who are working with Origin or who is trying to work with Origin, that Origin is no way is a dead software. It's continuously developing, and there is a full customer support that you can use if you have some questions. You can find, for example, very interesting and very inspiring the web page of Origin. They have a very nice supporting team where you can send your questions and your queries, and to my experience, they answer in very quickly. Alternatively, you can visit their YouTube channel, where they uploaded some training videos, and this particular way is how I've learned the Origin by myself. I was doing mainly watching these tutorial videos, and I'm trying to repeat it one by one. And this is one of the way how you guys also can learn Origin. And another, of course, way, last but not least, what you can do, how to improve your knowledge of Origin, is to pass some training session that DoubleClick is delivering. We are providing some very general introduction to Origin. We have some Origin Advanced course. Myself, I can teach you guys very specialized topics on Origin. I can teach you how to make very appealing curves, appealing graphs that could be used for publication. I can show how to design advanced graph, how to do statistics, how to do fitting, and some interesting features in Origin. So if you are a first-time user, when you will open it from the scratch, you will see something like that. There are a couple of interesting objects here. And the first, what you should probably recognize, is that Origin is very Windows. There are many features that any window program has. So there are some menus, there are some very important toolbars. Another important object that you can see on the right side of the slide is Origin workbook. The Origin workbook has contains all data sets that you will be using for the data analysis and for the graphing. Origin workbook also contains worksheets, and this is a very Excel-ish feature that could be very useful for those who are transferring your experience from Excel to Origin. So working with worksheets, you can easily incorporate your data from Excel to Origin workbook. On the left side of this window, you can see the Project Explorer. It is also very close to the Windows Explorer that you can have on your laptop, on your desktop. Project Explorer helps you to navigate across different data sets, across different folders. And having Project Explorer, you can make a very advanced files that contains all the data you prepare it, you measure it for in your scientific life, for example. Well, the previous slide was made for the previous version of Origin 2015. If you are using a newer version, you will see a bit different design. There is a new object that appears a couple of years ago. This object is known as apps. This is another proof of my statement that so Origin is not a dead software. Origin is continuously developing, and apps is some kind of plugins that developers they're trying to incorporate in the Origin software. But instead of updating a version of software, they are using the plugin features, plugin concept to bring some new functionalities to the Origin. So let's just start with the very basic features of Origin. The easiest way how to bring your data to Origin is to make a drag and drop. If you have your ASCII file or CSV file, you can just use drag and drop function and incorporate it into the Origin workbook. Origin will automatically recognize the structure of your file. It will create additional columns if needed, and these columns will have column designations as X, Y, and Z. Some columns you can set up to the Y or X error. That is very important if you are working in science and you have to show your experimental errors. And by highlighting your columns, you can use the icon that is on the left bottom corner in this slide. And using this toolbar icon, you can easily create your first graph. Something like that. What actually I would like to say at this point is that Origin is highly interactive. You can change everything, literally everything in your graph by just double-clicking on any particular element of this graph, either on axis or particular point or on the ticks. And by double-clicking on this element, you will see a new window that will appear. And this window will allow you to customize your graph to make it more appealing for the publication or to make it more advanced. For example, one of the interesting features that you can do with your columns, also by double left click or by the right click, is to change the designation. Sometimes this is highly needed if you want to change, for example, the errors from Y error to X error, and the sign of the symbol of the errors will change. And from this very primitive graph, you can have access to another very interesting and very peculiar graphs that are available in Origin. So Origin, as you see on the previous slide, has more than 100 built-in prepared plots, And I will now give you a couple of vignettes to convince you guys that Origin is definitely a handy software that you can use for preparation of graphs. The first graph I would like to mention is the two-dimensional graph where have a different sets of data, and Origin allows graphing this data by using different colors for the different sets. You can use also, you can show the statistical errors on this graph, and by working with optimization by customization of axes, you can make pretty cool graph that you can show in your presentation. You can show it in your paper. When I was working with the NMR data and UV spectroscopy or infrared spectroscopy, in my scientific career, I experienced several times that I have to present several data, several curves on the same graph. And this is kind of a pain in the ass because if you will plot it in a normal linear graph, you will have these graphs overlapping very much. One of the way how to overcome this problem is to make the plot with where the curves they are vertically shifted. And when I was plotting it in the other softwares, I was experiencing a lot of difficulties. Origin, in its turn, has already prepared a plot that is called vertically shifted y-axis. And with just in a fraction of a second, you can make something like this that you see on the slide right now. And it saves your time, it saves your energy for the future work. So Origin is very cool if you're working especially with spectroscopy data. Another very appealing feature that I would like to share with you guys is that you can make two-dimensional plots where you can use a color code for the bringing additional information to the audience, to the readers, for example, of your publication. Here, the points in these data sets, they are coded not only in the sizes, but also in the colors. So you, together with some primary information, you can show some additional knowledge, additional information that probably could be useful to present your data. When you are working with some more complex data, it's probably might be important to show your data in a polar plot. I have to admit at this point that I'm not a big fan of this data, but it's always good to know that this possibility exists in Origin and you can plot. When I was working with Origin, there were several occasions when it was needed to make a column plots like here, and Origin can do it very easily. You can plot a variety of data with that will be also coded with the different colors. What I'm using quite often in my scientific career, in my scientific life, is plotting two-dimensional data with several data sets that they are very different from each other. For example, here the example when the author's trying to present how deposition pressure, annealing temperature, and delta T, that is the shift in the phase transition, depends on one parameter, that is a transition temperature. And it's not very easy to make it from scratch, I have to admit. But Origin allows making it very easily and in a very handy way. And it goes through the creation of additional layers that are visible. A number of layers are presented on the left top corner of this graph. And by adding new data sets, to new layers, you can create additional y-axis that together with the primarily y-axis will give you some complex overview on the behavior of your system. That's what people in science are doing quite often, and as a scientist, as a reviewer, I see this option and feature is highly exploited across the world. Of course, sometimes it's needed, for example, to join several graphs together in one master plot. And that's what also you can do in Origin by creating new layers. Here you have not one graph with several y-axis, but you have 4 distinct graphs that are combined in one master plot. And that's also can be done in Origin in a fraction of a second. You are working with NMR spectroscopy with the DOISY or from UV or infrared, sometimes you have to show not only spectra, but some kind of projections of your spectra on one or particular X value. And this is the example how it could be done in Origin. So this is some kind of trajectory plot where on the top on the left side you can see the projection of this data on this double X axis. In chemistry, it's sometimes people are working with the ternary plots, and this is another example of ternary plot. I downloaded from the library of Origin graphs, and I created by myself just by watching the tutorial video, and you could do it as well, guys. And here is the dependence of something as a function of composition of several components. So again, the beauty of Origin is not just you can do this type of the graphs, but is the easiness how you can do that actually from your data. The last couple of slides I would like to share with you is about very advanced, very very colored graphs that you can also do with Origin. I didn't do it by myself. I borrow it from the Origin library, but just to give you a clue what Origin is capable of is just to show you that you can plot some kind of a volcano graph with additional projection of volcano data on the upper surface. Alternatively, you can make kind of waterfall plot for spectroscopy data in 3D. And this is another way how you can use Origin for presenting your NMR or UV-Vis data, for example. Surface plots and is also available in Origin, and some other advanced and complex graphs that are available in the latest versions of Origin 2022 and 23. Right, so I hope I convinced you now, guys, that Origin is very cool and handy with different types of plots available, but it's making graphs, it's not only the science, it's just one part of a science we're doing. And if you sometimes when you made your plot, you have to export this plot to another software. And there are 3 main options that are available in current version of Origin now. You can make a very simple Ctrl-V, Ctrl-C option. It's a typical copy and paste option. And by copy graph into your Word or PowerPoint, you will create the graph that will be embedded, that be linked with your project software. So you can, by just clicking on your graph, import it into Word, you can actually open Origin and change any details you want. Another possibility that you can do is to export your graph not as embedded object, but as a picture. And for that, you can use the export functionality. And export functionality, if you will switch it on, you will see a new window. And I would like to pay attention at this point now that all windows in Origin, they have a tree-like structure. So this plus minus symbol shows you that there are some additional opportunities that you can optimize, you can customize to export a particular graph into PowerPoint or Word. So as I think I'm pretty good with exporting Origin graphs into Word or PowerPoint. And I have to say that this particular feature, this exporting graph as a picture, has all functionality that you need to make a very nice graph of publication quality. So you can tune the resolution, you can tune the color code, you can tune the trimming of your graph, you can change the format, you can change actually everything, literally everything you can do with exporting your graph as a picture to Word or to PowerPoint. In the latest version of Origin 2022 and 2023, you can find the app that will allow you very easily to send your graph or your graphs to PowerPoint, for example. It can be done either by clicking this icon or using the app on the right side of your Origin working space, and that again will facilitate your time, facilitate your work to copy, to export the graphs that you designed to a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so let's move on, and let's assume that you are an experienced user and you are looking for something new features that you can do with Origin. And at this point, I would like to focus on the feature that I partially addressed a few minutes ago on layers. Layers are extremely important, well, at least from my point of view. And they're important because you can combine data sets of different nature into one graph. I already presented you how to make this complex graph when you have, and all these layers, they contain one individual graph, and by combining 3 layers, you will have this graph of quite high functionality that you can later on publish in your paper. Layers, they are not only about creating graphs with a different nature, but it's also about helping, for example, audience on your presentation, in the readers in your paper, to pay attention on some particular features of the graph. And that could be done by creating a new layer that will create a so-called inset. So inset, by clicking inset, you will create a new linked graph that will show you either the same data, or you can highlight one particular part of the data. So in this is the time resolved fluorescence spectra that I measured a few months ago, and I created a new layer that looks like an inset. And in this inset, you can see just the beginning of this fluorescent curve. So I did it in just by one click and in a couple of seconds. I found this particular feature is very attractive and very handy, especially for those who are working in with spectroscopy and some other in some scientific area. Of course, creating graph is not everything in science. Most of the time we are working with the data, and Origin has a plethora of different features that you can use to work with your data sets. The first feature that I would like to mention very briefly is sorting. Sorting will help you to sort your data as a single column, as a worksheet, in different ways. You can do it in ascending or in a descending way. You can also do it in a custom way, so you can easily sort your data with thousands of rows in one simple click. When we are working with data, we are always interested in some statistics, and Origin easily provides you this information. If you will switch to the statistics worksheet, you will find very standard values, such as a mean, standard deviation, sum. Of course, you can update, you can customize this information to show much more advanced information on statistics. And with that could be again done by just by right click on the desired column. You have to click on statistics on column, and then you will see a new dialog window with where you can optimize what kind of information you want from Origin to show you. Sometimes if you're working with a large data sets, it is important to find some specific numbers. And again, if you're doing it in Excel, well, it's possible to do it in Excel, but it's also possible to do it with Origin, because many features from Excel were borrowed, were incorporated into Origin right now. And for example, this slide shows how to find the values on Y column that fits to this particular criterion. You can make much more advanced analysis of your working data if you will be using not filter option, but worksheet script. Worksheet query is just the window where you can use some logic operators that will help you to find some features in your data sets, right?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I put the question?
Say it again.
Yeah, can I put the question now, or would you like to have?
Well, is it possible if you will either send it into chat, or we can discuss it later on after the end of my lecture? Is it okay for you? Does it work?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
cool.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so worksheet script works very nicely, and working with this logic operators, you can get some information about your data. Right. So then, what else might be important to you guys as scientists, right? It's amazingly that many Origin users, they don't know about possibility, for example, to split your work data. Let's just imagine that you imported data from your spectrophotometer, for example, or from any other scientific instrument, and your new workbook contains thousands of rows and thousands of columns. And it's actually very heavy, and you don't need that number of data. What you can do, you can split your workbook into different parts, and then just use these splitted parts for your data analysis. I was very excited when I found this option in Origin. For example, I split the three-column workbook into one column, and of course it makes life easier when you are working it. Then you can also reduce number of rows if you need, together with the number of columns. Let's move on to another feature that I found very interesting and very important from my point of view. I working quite a lot with the templates, and template is the way how you can analyze your data if you're working with the similar graphs or similar bunch of work data. For example, I'm doing a lot of small angle neutron and X-ray scattering, and it is important to plot them in the same way all the time. So I have hundreds of data, and I have to make them in the similar graph. So, and that could be done by creating first graph that I will send as a template. And if I will be needing in future to create a new graph with a similar structure, I have to just bring my saved template that is known as a scatter, and at the end I will have a graph template that already have prepared components, details that I need to present my data in a publication quality graph. So here, as you can see, I changed the axis from linear type to logarithmic type for y and x axis. I added some titles, I added a new legend. So every time I will be working with the small angle X-ray and neutron scattering data, I will just use my pre-saved template, and I will opening them one by one and all together. So I think this is very cool. The last couple of years, Origin developed a new way how to use template function even in a better way. They incorporated the option copy format. I will be addressing about this feature tomorrow, but it works even better than a template. So if you designed a graph, you can copy actually the format of this graph and use it for any other graphs that you have in your project. I think this is very cool for scientists. And of course, if you are doing some experimental science, it's important sometimes to fit your data with a model. And that's what I'm doing almost every day, because small angle X-ray and neutron scattering data requires fitting. And what is really cool in Origin, that it has more than 200 built-in fitting functions that you can use. I bet that in your scientific life, you probably will be needing no new functions that are not available in Origin. So if you will scroll through the functions that are already built in the Origin, you, with 99% probability, you will find what actually you need. The most simple functions, they're available right away, and they are either linear fit or polynomial fit. Using polynomial fit, you can, in a fraction of a second, fit your data by selecting the required polynomial number. For example, this is my favorite small angle X-ray scattering data that I was trying to fit with the second order polynomial. The fitting was not good, that you can see by chi-squared value. But if you will switch to the polynomial of higher order, you can actually easily fit, as you can see by this blue fitting curve. And that's what you can do right away even if you are using Origin for the first time. Of course, Origin has much more functionality that you can get from your fitting. This is the window for the polynomial fit, and as I mentioned before, it has a tree-like structure where you can set up not only the number of polynomial that you will be using, but some other features. I don't have time to address all these details, but believe me that there are many tools that you can optimize in your fitting to get what you want. You can actually fix intercept, you can fix intercept at specific value, you can fit only part of the curve, you can fit, you can show the residuals, whatever you need to fit your data. I already mentioned that in the latest versions of Origin, the company incorporated the concept of plugins, or also known as gadgets. One of the gadgets that I like and I'm using in my life is the gadget, for example, differentiate. Let's just assume that you have some kind of time-dependent function, and you are particularly interested to get the idea about the inclination points, right? Well, when I was doing it, when I was a student, I spent something like a couple of days trying to do it in some simple scientific software that was available at that time, like Sigma plot or some kaleidograph. With Origin and with the new app available, you can do with one click this differentiate option and get together with your data. You can get the first derivative that will be important if you are interested in this inclination data knowledge. Some people are very interested to learn what is the area under a certain under the curve. And that could be done by using another app, is known as Integrate. And this Integrate app is very customizable. You can select using this Integrate gadget the the specific part of your curve, and then that could be further used for calculation of area under this particular part of scientific data. What is more important, if you are using this gadget quite oftenly, you can again use a template that is called theme in this particular case, and using this integrate theme that you already customized for your features, you can use this theme for working with hundreds of similar data. As I mentioned, Origin is very handy when you're working with a similar sets of data, right? It saves your time, it saves your work and makes life much easier. Another feature with that I would like to mention right now is find peak. Well, if you in NMR spectroscopy, in infrared, in UV spectroscopy, it's important for sometimes to find the position of a peak. And Origin in the last couple of years developed a new app that is known as a fitting peak gadget that again could be used for finding the peak position. I will not address to other details of this app because there are a lot of details that we can actually discuss later on, but you should trust me that this app is very cool. So the last pillar that I would like to mention in my presentation, this training session, is about fitting. Well, a part of the polynomial fit and a part of the linear fit, you can do a very trendy, very complex fitting, and that could be done using nonlinear curve fitting tool that is available, I think, last 15 years in Origin software. And I will show you a very brief vignette how to use this nonlinear curve tool for one type of a curve that has a Gaussian shape. So if you working with this type of the data, you have to click on the nonlinear curve fit, then open dialog, and with the open dialog you will have access to already 200 built-in functions that are available in Origin right now. These are not functions, these are groups of functions that are divided by different applications, by different features. So together with Origin basic functions, there is a convolution group of functions, exponential, growth, logarithm, everything, spectroscopy. And if you will go one by one, I bet you will find the fitting function that you need for the fitting your particular data. But in my case, I need the only one type of function. It's a Gaussian function, and by selecting the Gauss function, I will see a new information that will show up on the bottom of the window. This will be the window when Origin will show you the idea. They will show you the theoretical curve with all fitting parameters available in this curve. By clicking the menus on the left part of this slide, you will see also the function that is used, the mathematical equation for this function. And then by selecting some preset initial parameters, you can get from the fitting the fitting parameters of your data. Of course, you can have some access to limit the fitting parameters in the way you want. You can set up lower bounds, upper bounds. And at the end of the fitting, Origin will provide you some residuals. That means the difference between theoretical curve that you used for the fitting and your experimental curve. And that residuals can be used for assessing your fitting quality. Of course, you can build your own function, and this is what Origin is actually, why Origin is very cool. If you will click on this icon, you will have opportunity either create your own function from scratch, or you can modify already built-in function like the Gaussian function that I presented before. Origin has some tools that you can use for the writing your fitting function. And I found myself this tool is very useful and very simple. I'm not a big programmer. I don't like programming actually at all. But working with Origin, I was able to build my own fitting function easily, and I'm using these fitting functions during my scientific work. So this is the fitting of the experimental data with the Gaussian fitting function. This is the window that Origin provides you, the results of the fitting. So the fitted value and standard errors, they are given here. And what is also important, and not all users, they are aware of that, there is a new functionalities that appeared maybe 3-4 years ago, and this is known as a recalculation log. You having a recalculation log, you can update, you can customize your fitting routine, and then you can reset your fitting software, your fitting analysis to update your fitting approach. So these are the residuals, and that you can the data about the fitting quality that again are very important for analysis of the fitting, the quality of the fitting. Right. So just let me switch to another very important tool that I particularly very like. I will just briefly mention this feature because as a scientist, I'm reading a lot of papers, and sometimes it's important to compare the data that were presented in a paper with your experimental data, right? There are two main options how you can do that. Ages ago, when I was a PhD student, I was printing the papers, and then using my my ruler, I was trying to recalculate this experimental data, experimental points from the graph, and that was actually very tedious work. Origin has a built-in gadget that is known as a digitizer, right? So this icon should be clicked on if you want to bring this this new functionality. I don't have the time to go through all the steps, but just briefly, I have to mention that once you will have this digitizer, you can work with already saved image of your graph that you want to digitize, or you can use the clipboard, and from that, by setting the range of the y and x axis, by setting the coordinates, you can have you can digitize. It means convert this electronic data, this paper data, to electronic data. At the end, the digitizer will help you to build the data set that you can use for the plotting, and you can use for the comparing with your experimental data. Digitizer has several modes. You can do it in the manual. You can do it by clicking one point by one, or you can use auto mode if you have a lot of points on the graph. Again, many options that are available in this particular gadget, and at the end you will end up with something like that. So these are digitized points that I've got from the graph in the paper, and then I can work with that and do what actually I want. The last feature I would like to mention at this training session is the opportunity find X and Y from the calibration plot. We are working in experimental science with some calibration tools, calibration graphs. And if you are working with, for example, UV spectroscopy, you have to establish, you have to measure the concentration of a chemical substance in solution. Usually, the usual way how it should be done, you have to plot the calibration graph with where you have to measure, have to prepare the solutions with a known concentration. By measuring absorption, you will end up with a calibration plot. The point is how to find the concentration of your unknown concentration of your substance if you have this calibration plot. Ages ago, I was doing it by printing this calibration plot and finding it by a ruler. But now you can do it again using the fitting tool. So if you are able to fit your calibration data with one model, it could be linear plot, it could be polynomial graph, or it could be anything, you will have access to find X and Y option, and by switching it on, you will end up at the end of the fitting with a new worksheet where you can just set up the value, for example, of absorption you determined for a solution with unknown concentration of your chemicals, and then Origin will just calculate the value of X from a known value of Y. The similar you can do by calculation of Y from the known value of X. I found this particular feature very handy for those who are working in experimental science. And of course, I should mention the opportunity that scientists can do with the statistics. Origin has built in a variety of different statistical analysis tools like one-way, two-way ANOVA that we can discuss in one of the training sessions that is available from DoubleClick. You can do one-way or two-way ANOVA. You can do principal component analysis. That is important if you're working with some stochastic data. And yeah, and last but not least, you can work with batch processing. That feature is available for the last 10 years, and you can do batch processing, let's say fitting or plotting, well, with any type of data that is you might have in future. So with that, I would like to finish, and I'm ready to take any questions if you